For this video, I'm going to show you how to do the hatching part of this worksheet, shading with hatching and cross-hatching on value scales. A value scale is basically a step-by-step sample of what it is possible to do with a drawing medium and how many values or shades of light or dark you can get. Artists use this a lot of times to compare with their drawings or compare with their source images so that they know, okay, if I need it to be really super light, on the photo it looks closest to, okay, number 3, and then they know what technique or how hard to press because they've already done it in a value scale. So this helps you, it's going to help you when you get into charcoal later on, or when you're doing printmaking, you can kind of compare it and you have some practice making these marks. So the first one we're going to do is called hatched value scale. Hatching is a method of adding value to drawing or printmaking, if you're etching, by using sets of parallel lines. So you can see that all the lines here are going in one general direction the entire time, and the more the lines, the more there are, and the closer together there are, the darker the value is going to be. So at number 10, you see no white spaces at all. 9, you see just a few. 8, you start to get a little bit more, and so on down the line. Whereas you get to number 1, and you can barely see the lines at all. So with hatching, it's just as much about how hard you press with the implement that you're using. I'm using a number 2 pencil for this, as it is about not only just as how hard you press, but how many lines there are and how close they are together. So with this one, I'm going to start with my number 2, which is the one that is closest to the end. Actually, I'll start with number 1. So I'm going to use a very sharp pencil. If you have a mechanical pencil, this actually works a little bit better with mechanical pencil because you don't have to sharpen it as much. But for number 1, I'm going to hold my pencil way back here. So I just want to let the weight of the pencil make the mark. I don't want to press real hard. So I'm just very lightly putting a straight line and another straight line, just barely making any marks on the paper. I'm not sure if you can even see that very well, so I'll lift it up for you. So just barely making anything, just a whisper, okay? Then I'm going to head down to the other extreme and do number 10. So for this one, I'm going to start adding my lines, and I'm trying to make them as parallel as possible, as straight as possible. The easiest way to do that is to place your pencil on the line and then look at the other line and draw a line straight across as quickly as you can. With number 10, this is going to take you probably the longest to do. Because you have so many lines, you definitely want to press a little bit harder. You don't want to break the tip of your pencil or anything, but you definitely want some dark lines. And I'm trying to fill in all of the white spaces that are in between the lines. I definitely want to have individual lines that I'm doing. So you notice how I'm placing the pencil on the line and pulling it across to the other line. What you don't want to do, is a common mistake that people make when they're hatching, is to kind of do this. If you do that, you'll notice that the lines aren't exactly parallel, and you're not going to have good craftsmanship that way. So you want to draw deliberate, straight lines going in one direction. That's what hatching is. Hatching is also not going to be, so that's wrong. No, this is right. Yay. Another thing that kids will do that I've seen before is they'll do this and make like little zigzaggy lines across. Don't do that, because when you go to make your other line, you're actually angling your lines slightly in 2 different directions when you zigzag it across. So don't do that. That's wrong. You want to make sure that you do individual lines straight across. It does end up having a different texture to it. Your lines should cover up any of those darker spots. You can have partial lines as long as they're going in between the ones that you've already done to cover up the white space. So I'm going to keep going. You want it to be as dark as humanly possible. Okay, so number 10 is done. The darkest I can possibly get it, and the lightest I can possibly get it at number 1. I'm going to start at number 6 now, halfway in the middle. So I'm using this as a guide to help me see sort of how to make those lines, or how many to make. So I can see that there's a little bit of space here, so I'm going to start with adding my pencil lines, and then I'm going to add a few more in between. Nice, deliberate, straight lines. This is a little easier with a sharp pencil. So, trying to make it match up with, as best as I can, with the one in the sample. Okay, so there's my number 1, my number 6, and number 10. Okay. So now I'm going to start working halfway in between. So I'm going to do probably number 4 next because it's about halfway, or you could do 3, I suppose. And then once that's done, I'm going to work halfway in between 6 and 4 and get 5. Halfway in between, I can do 3 next and then 2. I can do 8 next and then 7. So you're always working by halves. You're trying to get halfway in between these two values and then halfway in between these two values. And that way you get a better transition, and you can make sure that you're actually getting a transition between your values. So I'm going to show you how that's done. So I'm going to look at 8, between 6 and 10. I might do that one next. So I'm going in between the lines. So now it's starting to look like 6, so I'm going to keep going. I want to make sure that these lines go all the way to the edge. Okay, so it's a little bit darker than 6, yet still lighter than 10. I might go back and add just a few more darker lines. I'm going to zoom in on this, or at least clarify that for you. So you can see the 8 as compared with 8, the 6 is compared with 6, and the 10 is compared with 10. Now I'm going to work halfway in between 6 and 8 to get number 7. Again, just start off with adding some lines. You can start adding more in between. So I'm going to try and make my 7 at first look like 6. And then I'm going to add a few more lines in between. So I'm trying to pull it slightly darker, but not as dark as 8. So there should be a transition there. I might make 8 a little bit darker. Come to think of it. Okay. I might not need to add more lines. I might need to go over some of my lines darker just to see if it gets that way. So trying to make a transition between 6 and 8, and then again between 8 and 10, and fill that part in, and then start working on the lighter end of the spectrum. So it's okay to press a little harder right from the get-go because I know it's going to be pretty dark. Number 9 is going to be almost completely covered up. I still want to make individual lines. At this point, if your pencil starts to get dull, you might want to sharpen it. So you can continue to make sharp lines instead of fuzzy ones. You don't want this to look like it's a blended gradient. You want to definitely be able to see the texture of the lines. Alright, so to me, I'm going to pull 10 a little bit darker because I still see some white spots in there. Alright, so now I've got my transition on the darker values. And I'm going to start on the lighter values. This won't take as long because I don't have to make as many lines. So I'm going to go from between, let's say 1 and 6 is about, well, I'll start with 4 first. And here I'm not going to press as hard because I want it to be lighter in value. So I'm going to adjust my pressure on my pencil so that it's not quite as dark, the lines that I am making. And then on 5, I might press just slightly harder. The key to making straight lines is to make them fast, but with control, so like this. Sometimes it helps if you're having trouble making your straight lines and you're lifting up your pencil. You want to make sure that you keep your hand down on the table and then you only lift the tip of your pencil just slightly when you're making those marks. Okay.